What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Mixed Marvel Arts, your go-to channel for all things MMA and comic books. Today we'll be reviewing issue number 4 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Last time we saw Spider-Man meet Dr. Octopus for the first time, and he defeated him after receiving some help from the Human Torch in the form of a motivational speech. In this issue, we'll see the first appearance of the Sandman. He was one of the major villains in Spider-Man 3, and his origin story was pulled directly from this very comic for that movie. And after making her first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15, we'll get to see another side of Liz Allan in this issue too. She appeared in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, and we'll see some great character development from her today. So let's get right into it. It begins with a cool full-page layout of Spider-Man punching right through the Sandman. And the story begins with Spider-Man spotting some criminals preparing to rob a jewelry store. So Spider-Man subdues them with his web, and the criminals immediately claim they're going to sue Spider-Man for attacking them. So Spider-Man just stands there, completely confused, while the 3 criminals yell for the police. Obviously Spider-Man shouldn't have webbed them before they did anything wrong, but he clearly should have left before the police arrived. I don't know why he waited for one to arrive. Spider-Man blames J. Jonah Jameson for everybody's hate on him, so he swings to J. Jonah Jameson's Daily Bugle office to leave something behind for him for the next morning. And then Spider-Man sees the police chasing a criminal, who turns out to be the Sandman. Spidey approaches him just as he turns into sand. The Sandman is able to soften and harden his body at will, which allows him to do pretty well in his fight against Spider-Man. But when Spider-Man's mask rips during their encounter, the fight is cut short as he immediately retreats in order to save his secret identity. As Sandman progresses in his bank robbery plan, Spider-Man is back in his room trying to sew his mask back together. Needless to say, he doesn't have very good sewing skills. As Aunt May returns home, Peter gets distracted by a news program explaining the origin of Sandman. Flint Marko was an imprisoned criminal who escaped through a drainage tunnel one night. He hid from the police in an atomic devices testing center where a nuclear explosion went off, causing him to merge with the sand beneath him and eventually become the Sandman. When Peter realizes Aunt May is home, he immediately covers himself in a bathrobe to conceal his Spidey suit. Aunt May assumes he's sick, and she sits by Peter to comfort him. Of course, she's completely unaware that all Peter wants is to be left alone so he can sew his mask back together. So as the Sandman hides from the police yet again, Peter stays up half the night working on his mask. Then he heads to the Daily Bugle before school, where J. Jonah Jameson sits on a chair full of Spider-Man's webbing. It was a pretty great prank by Spider-Man, and it's quite funny that Peter is the one who has to bring J. Jonah Jameson a new pair of pants the next day. But as you just saw, Betty Brant was introduced for the very first time. She's going to become a major character soon, so you can look out for that in future issues. Meanwhile, Peter's visit proves worthless as he just wanted an advance from J.J. Jameson, but of course Jameson refused. Back at school, we learn that Peter actually has a date with Liz Allan after class, and Peter has to turn her down this time because he prioritizes tracking down the Sandman after school. His excuse is that he needs to study, and Liz Allan is extremely upset with him. But this is a huge turn of events from the first issue, where Liz Allan was actually bullying Peter. Now it appears that she is sincerely interested in dating him. And as Peter gets kicked out of class for not paying attention, the Sandman sneaks into the school to hide from the cops. He goes right into Peter's class, with Flash and Liz in it, and starts asking the principal to give him a high school diploma. The principal actually stands up to Sandman, until Spider-Man bursts through the door and punches Sandman right in the face. All the students, including Flash Thompson, start cheering Spider-Man on, as they're completely unaware it's actually Peter Parker, the kid that they're constantly making fun of. Spider-Man manages to protect his classmates by throwing the Sandman out of the room, and we learn that Liz is even more interested in Peter than we thought. While Flash is cheering on Spider-Man, Liz is frantically asking where Peter went. She's really concerned for him. Of course, Peter is fighting the Sandman as she speaks, He's struggling quite a bit as the Sandman keeps converting his body into sand. The Sandman gets Spider-Man's arm stuck again and then headbutts him pretty hard. Spider-Man is just completely clueless as to what he can do to defeat Sandman. But then he finally gets an idea. He attempts to relocate their fight to the school's basement, and it works. Then he grabs a drill, and Sandman converts back into sand, just as Spider-Man had hoped. Then he grabs a vacuum cleaner and vacuums the Sandman up. It's a great idea on Stan Lee's part, because it's just a hilarious way to defeat a supervillain. His ideas were really original in these classic stories. But then Spider-Man makes the situation even better by shooting some pictures of himself jumping through sand, just to make it look as though they're action shots from his fight with the Sandman. He's going to use these pictures to earn some money from J. Jonah Jameson. At that very moment, Jameson actually appears at the school and tells the police to go inside to arrest Spider-Man. He just won't give up on his mission to get Spider-Man defeated. But as it turns out, the police actually support Spider-Man, and Spidey exits the school to inform the cops that he's left the defeated Sandman inside for them. Then he rushes inside to change back into Peter Parker. And just as he finishes changing, J. Jonah Jameson approaches him, and Peter hands him his pictures of Spider-Man fighting the Sandman. Since Sandman has been taken down, Peter now has the time to take Liz out on a date. But when he goes to tell her, it turns out it's too late and she's already made plans with Flash Thompson. Peter gets so angry that he actually grabs Flash and prepares to fight him. But he decides against it because he could seriously hurt Flash in a fight. And his classmates mistake this for Peter simply being afraid. But as they leave Peter behind, Flash continues making fun of Peter, and Liz actually asks him to stop bullying Peter. So things are getting interesting between Peter and Liz, but it's not quite clear if they're ever really going to go out or not. And the issue ends with Peter in deep thought, wondering why he continues going out as Spider-Man when it just keeps damaging his personal life. But he simply can't give up his superhero activities because he knows that he must use his powers for the greater good. It was an awesome issue. The fight between Spider-Man and the Sandman was great, and his vacuuming technique to win the fight was really original. But the highlight for me was seeing the character development out of Liz Allan, as she seems to be developing an interest in Peter. I always enjoy seeing the events from Peter's personal life in these comics. That's sometimes even more interesting than his Spider-Man fights. So I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. What did you think of the issue? Did you enjoy the fight between Spider-Man and the Sandman? And do you think Peter will ever take Liz out on a date? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm very curious to hear them. If you want to hear from me more often, follow the link in the video description to my Twitter and follow me on there. And if you want to see more comic reviews, then hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you guys next time.